So, did you guys vote today? I did. If you saw me on my Instagram today, you know that I voted. You also saw me talk about some different things and pose a question on there. So, it's about time we address that question, don't you think? Let's get started. What's going on, fans? This is your boy, Verdi L. Coleman III, the king of poetry, formerly, and your favorite doctoral student, your favorite teacher, your favorite professor. Here today, it's election day. As of the time of this video, it is election day. And I kind of wanted to give a little bit of history to a question that was asked before. I asked this question. I asked him, I said, why is it that certain people don't vote? And a lot of people have said, their vote doesn't count. They feel like it doesn't make a difference. You got some people that just absolutely cannot vote. I mean, they're not able to because of prior convictions and whatnot. So, all of the things lead up to something that was very alarming for me, and I decided that I was going to look up something called the Electoral College. Now, the Electoral College, for a short definition, is basically a point system on how we elect our different presidents, so on and so on. Now, one thing is certain. All the information that I'm giving you right now is synthesized and taken from history.com, specifically in the news section of the Electoral College. I will place the link down below for your information's sake. So everything I'm going to be referencing is going to be from this article. Now, in the research of the Electoral College, I've learned that in five times in history, presidential candidates that have won particular, popular votes, but lost in the Electoral College, this was the reason why. The Electoral College literally cheated these presidents out of their victories. Now, it does lead to a question, why do we use the system? And a lot of people thought that Congress should have picked the president. They thought that Congress should pick the president, but that is basically the same thing as saying that, let the king be chosen by monarchy or, whatever, by natural law, I guess you could say. They wanted a country that was led by the people for the people. And that's where the Democratic vote came in. Now, so with the Electoral College, the electors and not the American people, the electors are the ones who vote for president. Now, with the modern election being the way it is, the first candidate who gets to 270 points out of the total 538, they're the ones that win the White House. So it's nothing to do with the popular vote. That is one of the reasons why people say my vote doesn't matter, because in the end, it truly does not matter. Popular vote does not matter if there's going to be a system in it that will undermine what already exists. And so we look at it as a system of compromise. Now, back at the time with the Philadelphia Convention, all the delegates were basically just looking into something new. And they realized that they didn't want to deal with a whole new tyrannical system. They didn't want to deal with chaos. So you had this group of delegates who felt like Congress should have nothing to do with picking the president. And that the reason why they said that was because of corruption, and be like, hey, why don't you do this right here? I'm gonna bring you in. And that leaves no room for anybody else to be able to come in and actually do the work that can be done. It just stays in a particular rut. Let's say, for example, let's just say if George Washington was to just select John Adams off the top because they chummy with each other, things will never get done. Now, I've never known George Washington or John Adams to be notable presidents, but what achievements could we have gotten out of them other than being the first or whatever John Adams was? We don't know. Now, there was another group of people that wanted to let the people elect a president by popular vote. Now, the reason why this didn't go over so well was because back in the 18th century, the voters didn't have enough resources to be fully informed about who their candidates were. So that led to problems. It's the second thing. They didn't want a Democratic mob steering the country astray. Basically, they still wanted to have control, but they didn't want to be under Britain's thumb. They wanted a new, different system of being able to control their independence, be able to control the people that are living in their country. And third disaster that could have possibly happened is that, you get a president who's popular with the people, that takes away the power that Congress has. Now, of all these things, this is how the Electoral College came about. But how were the point system created? How was the rules for the Electoral College based off of? Slaves. A lot of people don't want to admit it, but the Electoral College is based off of slavery. So you had the way that we decided the electors to be assigned to each state. It was because of the slave owning states and the non-slave owning states. Now, this is also where we get that 3/5 compromise deal. Now, if you look back, 40% of people living in southern states were enslaved black people back in 1787. They couldn't vote. Why? Because they weren't treated as human beings. All right. Now, if you look where this says 3/5 compromise, the Negro was considered to be 3/5 of a human being, meaning the other 2/5 of them would be considered property. Now, why 3/5? Don't know. But what we do know is that the compromise ensured that the southern states would ratify the Constitution and gave Virginia, home to more than 200,000 slaves, a quarter of that electoral votes required to win the presidency, which in this case, at the time, was 46. Now, one of the things about the Electoral College and slavery was that the more slaves you had, the more power you had to decide, how many points you were given and how much influence you had over the election of the president. So again, this is still not a perfect system. It's not even close to being perfect. What I will say, however, is that with the Electoral College, you realize that back in the day, there were no political parties. Everybody had their own discretion. There was no party that you had to select. Today you had to choose between Democrat or Republican. There was no such thing as that back in 1787. All there was just individual people with individual minds. Now, so the Constitution, being as vague as it was, it said nothing about how the states actually allot their electoral votes. This was basically saying that every elector's vote should be counted, but over time, you had these two particular states, Maine and Nebraska. They made it to where they don't use the Electoral College. They strictly do anything. They strictly do anything outside of the Electoral College. Basically means that they're not influenced by it. That's why you don't hear about, Maine and Nebraska on the news. You don't hear about the presidential candidates who win those states. They don't care. They vote for who they want to vote for. And so that's going into what's called the popular vote. All right. Now, ultimately, in the Constitution, if no single candidate wins a majority of the electoral votes, the decision goes to the House of Representatives. Each state gets one vote. Imagine that. Basically, it's taking everything out of the game all over again. Like all that voting, all of that going on, it basically becomes useless. So that is in short what the Electoral College is and how dangerous it is to still exist in this world. The Electoral College being built on the backs of slaves who didn't even count for a full human being. We're living in a world right now where our lives as Black people matter less than ever. We are as worse off now as our ancestors were back in the day when they only counted for 3/5 of human beings. So, honestly, I could care less about Democrat, Republic, Independent, Liberal, Conservative. I don't care. I just want the people that are going to do their job to do it correctly. Granted, the Electoral College basically works in benefit for the party that's in power, and it gives them the authority to do whatever they want to do. But I would think that, knowing what we know now, that we would leave it to the popular vote. Let the people decide who should really be there, not a point system. So I am going to say publicly, no, our votes do not matter. Our votes will never matter until the Electoral College is destroyed and the popular vote is back in place. Because if you want our votes to matter, this is for any presidential candidate that comes after this election. If you want our votes to matter, destroy the Electoral College. Never revive it again. And on that note, this has been another Silvertongue production. If you are a new listener or a new viewer to this channel, subscribe, share with your friends. For those of y'all that have already subscribed but have not hit that bell to get notifications from me, go ahead and hit that bell. And if you got questions, comments, ideas, hit me on my social media, drop a comment. And if you want to read stuff for yourself, the link will be in the description below. So take care, stay safe, be blessed.